I had a political column, and I also was the editor of a magazine. I was very busy in that area for a while.
But didn't
so
you
long
contemplate
ago, everybody's forgotten.
Running for office? And didn't Roosevelt encourage you to do it?
Yes, he wanted me to, but I think he said he wanted me to make me happy.
Roma Wines present
Suspense.
Roma Wines, made in California for enjoyment throughout the world.
Salud.
Your health, senor.
Roma Wines toast the world. The wine for your table is Roma Wine, made in California for enjoyment throughout the world.
This is the Man in Black, here to introduce this weekly half hour of Suspense. Tonight from Hollywood, we bring you as star Mr. Orson Welles. This will be the first of two consecutive performances by Mr. Welles, in which he will appear as the protagonist of Curt Siodmak's novel, Donovan's Brain. The producer of Suspense and its sponsors, the Roma Wine Company of Fresno, California, feel that this story is so unusual that it merits more than our usual time. So in somewhat of a departure from established radio formulas, we will bring you the story of Donovan's Brain in two parts. Part one you will hear tonight, and part two next Monday night at this same time.
Before we take you to the scene of our drama, let's take a little journey of a different kind.
On May 15, 1944, Orson Welles was placed on the U.S. Treasury payroll to consult for the duration of the war. His pay? An honorary $1.
And now we find ourselves in the
3 days later, Welles was the star of a seminal CBS broadcast. Although he'd appeared on Suspense many times before, on May 18th, he was the lead in Part 1 of William Spier's production of Donovan's Brain, based on the 1942 Curt Siodmak novel. Welles played Dr. Patrick Cory, who successfully learns to keep a brain alive outside the human body. The sound effects were outstanding for their time. Donovan's Brain is considered one of the first adult science fiction broadcasts.
And with the performance of Orson Welles as Dr. Patrick Cory, we again hope to keep you in suspense.
As I sit now outside my laboratory door writing under the heading Experiment 87, this final entry in my casebook, I know that these are the last words I shall ever write upon this earth. I neither ask nor expect forgiveness now or hereafter. But for those who seek some explanation, I refer them simply to this casebook. Let them read it carefully from its first entry on that ill-starred day of July the 13th. July 13th. Today I bought a small Capuchin monkey from an organ grinder. The animal trembled with fear when I took it into my laboratory, and when I tried to pet it, it bit me. I had to make it trust me completely. Fear causes an excess secretion of adrenaline, resulting in an abnormal condition of the bloodstream which would throw off my observations, so I fed it, and finally the creature voluntarily crept up into my arms, uttering little whimpers of content. When it laid its head against my shoulder, I stabbed it with a surgical lancet. It died instantly. Well, David, what do you think of it?
Well, it's pretty amazing, all right.
See what I've done, don't you?
I think so.
You think so? Good Lord, don't you know?
Well, after all, Dad, I'm only a second-year medical
I know,
student.
but what of it? I was a second-year student. Who is it?
It's me, Janice.
Come in, darling.
Patrick, Dr. Schrott is here to see you.
Oh, come on in, Doctor.
You know our son David, of course.
Yes, of course. How are you, my boy?
Fine, thanks, Doctor.
Well, Patrick, hard at it as usual, I see.
Patrick, you didn't eat the lunch I sent in to you.
Well, what is it this time, Patrick?
A brain.
What?
A brain, a monkey's brain.
Oh.
What about the brain, Patrick?
I've been trying to see how long I can keep the tissue alive.
Oh, is that it in that jar?
There's considerably more to it than just a jar, though. Want to see how it works?
Is it still alive?
In a way, yes. It's a fairly simple device, actually, Doctor. Variation on Corell's mechanical heart. The brain lies in a bath of blood serum. These rubber arteries are fixed to the vertebral and internal carotid arteries of the brain. The blood substance is forced through the cycle of Willis to feed the tissue. Over here, I've installed a small rotary pump that forces the blood circulation, you see?
But how do you know it's alive?
It's very easy to determine. The brain, when functioning, gives off infinitesimal electrical impulses. They can be measured. As a matter of fact, I've hooked the encephalograph up to a small amplifying system. The brain impulses can actually be heard. Here, I'll turn it on. See? Quite effective, isn't it?
Yes, it's effective. And it's wrong, Patrick. Terribly wrong.
I've tried to tell him, Dr. Schrott.
In heaven's name, what's wrong with it?
Oh, Patrick, you and your mechanistic philosophy, trying to reduce life to a mere matter of chemicals and test tubes. The origin of life is from a higher domain than that, Patrick. And you're profaning.
Nonsense. You can't stop the progress of science. Every discovery of whatever kind is a step forward. If I can prove that the brain can perform certain functions outside the body, who knows where we may be able to go from there?
Oh, Patrick, how do you know that thing in there doesn't feel pain? How do you know it isn't writhing in agony?
Brain tissue itself is insensitive, you know that. Just a feeling look. I'll switch on the encephalograph. See? There. Notice the faintness of the amplified alpha rays. Notice the comparatively slow rate of pulsation now. Notice what happens when I tap on the glass jar.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States.
My friends, yesterday, on June 4th, 1944, Rome fell to American and Allied troops. The first of the Axis capitals is now in our hands. 1 up and 2 to go. It is perhaps significant that the first of these capitals to fall should have the longest history of all of them. The story of Rome goes back...
Welles was a longtime supporter and campaign speaker for Franklin D. Roosevelt. He occasionally sent the president ideas and phrases, some of which were incorporated into FDR's speeches. This fireside chat is from the evening of June 5th, 1944. On that night, Welles reprised his Jane Eyre role of Edward Rochester for the Lux Radio Theater.
Greetings from Hollywood, ladies and gentlemen. This is the beginning of a busy week for me, with Gary Cooper in the story of Dr. Wassel, opening in New York tomorrow night, and here in Hollywood on Wednesday. And tonight, the week is certainly off to a wonderful start, with 2 of our town's most accomplished artists in one of the immortal love stories of the English language, Loretta Young and Orson Welles in Jane Eyre. Charlotte Bronte wrote Jane Eyre almost a century ago, and yet in a world at war...
That season, Lux was CBS's most popular show, with a 23.3 rating.
This is Robert St. John in the NBC newsroom in New York. Ladies and gentlemen, we may be approaching a fateful hour. All night long, bulletins have been pouring in from Berlin, claiming that D-Day is here, claiming that the invasion of Western Europe has begun. Let me read you several of the latest bulletins. One says that a report, unconfirmed by Allied sources, of course...
Early on the morning of June 6th, reports confirmed the Allied invasion of Europe had begun. Amphibious landings on the Normandy coast were preceded by bombardment and an airborne landing of 24,000 Allied troops shortly after midnight. Allied infantry and armored divisions began landing on the coast of France at 6:30 a.m. The target stretch of the Normandy was divided into 5 sectors: Utah, Omaha, Gold, Juneau, and Sword. Strong winds blew the landing crafts off course. The men landed under heavy fire from batteries overlooking the beaches, and the shore was littered with obstacles like wooden stakes, metal tripods, and barbed wire. Casualties were heaviest at Omaha with its high cliffs. At Gold, Juneau, and Sword, several fortified towns were cleared in house-to-house fighting. And 2 of Gold's gun emplacements were disabled using specialized tanks. But only 2 of the beaches, Uno and Gold, were linked on the first day.
Has not confirmed any of these reports. And now we have just been informed that we can expect in a very few...
That evening, Orson Welles took to the air with a special edition of his almanac.
Following program will be interrupted to bring you any late news developments.
Good evening. This is Orson Welles. Instead of our regular program at this time, the makers of Mobil Gas and Mobil Oil and the Mercury Theater bring you a special broadcast.
My dearest son, I guess June 6th and 7th will be always remembered in history. I know that none of us will ever forget those days, even we who live at home. Your father will have more to remember about these 2 days and more to tell you. I don't know where he is now as I write this. Somewhere in the north of France it must be. But when he comes back, and oh, my dear little son, I pray to God he will come back. When he comes back, I know he'll have a better story to tell than this. Anyway, here's our side of it, here on the home front. That's what the papers call it, the home front. Sometimes I feel kind of ashamed of that expression. It really isn't much of a front. We do have trouble getting houses, and there isn't much room on the streetcars. Sometimes the steak is a little tough, but there aren't any of us living on K rations, and altogether the war is pretty easy to fight here in sunny California. We work hard, and don't let anybody tell you we've let down because we haven't. And we won't.
Secretary of the Treasury Henry Morgenthau asked Wells to lead the 5th war bond drive.
Nobody out here sleeps in a bomb shelter.
It opened on June 12th with a 1-hour radio show from Texas over all 4 networks. June 12th was the same day all Normandy beachheads were finally connected. The next week, Wells was at Soldier Field in Chicago when this leg of the drive was broadcast.
Tonight, the Coca-Cola Company, sponsor of the Victory Parade of Spotlight Bands, is giving its time to the United States Treasury in order that you may hear a special war bond program from Soldiers Field in Chicago. Therefore, the Victory Parade of Spotlight Bands will not be broadcast, but will keep its date in person with the war workers of the Bruner Ritter Company at Bridgeport, Connecticut. Keep tuned to hear a gala floor show. Among other headliners, Secretary of the Treasury Henry Morgenthau Jr., Lana Turner, Jack Benny, Ray Bolger, Paul Lucas, and others.
I see flashing that this America is only you and me. Its power, weapons, testimony are you and me. Its crimes, lies, thefts, defections are you and me. Its Congress is you and me. The officers, capitals, armies, ships are you and me. Freedom, language, poems, employments are you and me. Past, present, future are you and me.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Secretary of the United States Treasury, Mr. Henry Morgenthau, Jr.
This America is you and me. When you lend your government money for this war, you join a great crusade. General Eisenhower has called it that, a great crusade. Your bond is a symbol of your part in that crusade. Your money goes to the men fighting for us in this desperate war. They need that money. Every penny you can raise. They need it more than ever before. They need it now for ships and planes and tanks and bombs and bullets. For all the engines of destruction by which they mean to force surrender from the enemy on their own ground and to blast a sure foundation for the peace. They need money for war, and they need it also for mercy. Mercy is expensive, too. The medical department of the Army has spent approximately $1 billion since Pearl Harbor. So far this year, we've spent more than $5 million for penicillin alone. We spent millions more, many millions, to fly the wounded and sick out of battle areas. Last year, we flew more than 170,000 wounded men to the safety of hospitals. 170,000 men. And out of that number, 11 men died. The rest was saved. Your bond helped save those men. America's great only if it puts the purposes of war before the war itself.
Americans were encouraged to buy $16 billion in bonds to finance the most violent phase of the war. When this bond drive ended on July 8th, U.S. citizens had raised almost $21 billion in war loans.
From tyranny, from fear, from physical, moral, and economic bondage.